I'm Teresa Gray, the Executive Director of Mobile Medics International.
So what inspired you to create Mobile Medics International?
Well, I was traveling doing humanitarian work with another organization, and I went on 3 trips with them. I went to Haiti, the Philippines, and to the Syrian refugee crisis in Greece. And I noticed that there was sort of a gap in the way that medical humanitarian aid was done. Most places came up, set up a stationary clinic or hospital, and people that needed medical assistance came to them. But there were lots of people that either couldn't or wouldn't go to that permanent or semi-permanent structure because they were trapped or for various different reasons. And so I looked around for an organization that did more mobile medicine that would reach those people, and I couldn't really find one. So I started one. That's how it happened. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Honestly, but I knew what I wanted to do. I just couldn't find an organization that did that. So I made one.
So can you tell me about your operation?
Yeah. So Mobile Medics International does 3 things. We specialize in refugee crisis. So the Venezuelan walkers coming into Colombia, the Mexican-American border, the Syrian refugee crisis, and most recently, the Ukrainian refugee crisis. We do natural disaster response. So every natural disaster in the last 7 years, we've responded to, including, again, most recently, the Turkey earthquake. I just got home from a week ago. And then we have what we call a medical self-sustaining model. So one of the things that we have found in our travels is we would go someplace for either a refugee crisis or a natural disaster, and we would find areas in the world that had little to no access to basic healthcare. And so what we started was, if you will commit to a 5-year relationship with us, we will, and identify people in your community that would like to be health aides, we will take those people and train them all the way from first aid and CPR up to modified first responders. We will find and procure you a clinic. We will stock it with all the supplies and equipment, and we will provide you with all the medications you need. In addition, we will find local healthcare providers that are willing to mentor you in country, so you have someone local, and we will provide telemedicine for you. So that's the other thing that we do, because I do not believe that anybody should be reliant on foreign aid for basic health care. I do not believe in going back to someplace year after year after year after year. And COVID was a good example of that. People that were very dependent on medical aid, foreign medical aid or international medical aid during COVID, got nothing. So yeah, that's the other thing that we do. So refugee crisis, natural disaster, and medical self-sustaining.
With Turkey, how was it on the ground?
Turkey was exponentially worse than you can imagine. It was horrible. I think Turkey was my 24th or 25th mission in the last 6 years. I have never seen more death, destruction, and human suffering ever. It was horrible.
Well, when you go to situations like that, how do you maintain your mental health during this?
Well, I've been a paramedic for 30 years. I'm currently a nurse. And in medicine, we do a thing called compartmentalism. So when we're in the middle of it, when we're treating people, when we see things that are very emotional, we sort of put that to the side and get our job done. Your emergency cannot be my emergency. Your trauma cannot be my trauma, right? You want me to be calm and to know my stuff and to get done what needs to be done. That's what you're counting on me for. And so that's what we do. Afterwards, as a team, we do a nightly debriefing. Let's talk about what we saw. Let's talk about what we did. Let's talk about what we smell and heard, and just sort of get it all out. And then 2 weeks after every mission, I personally call everybody that was on the team and check in with them emotionally. How are you doing? Did are you having trouble sleeping? Just mental health check. And then we also have a licensed psychologist on staff that everybody has access to anonymously. So they can call him, they can email him, and he will touch base with them. So we try really hard to debrief in the moment and then follow up. And so that's sort of how you deal with it, compartmentalize it, but then it's really important to deal with it and get those feelings out.
What are some of the differences you see from natural disasters like Turkey to Ukraine, where it's been going on for over a year now?
Yeah. Well, each response is very unique. So a natural disaster is like a sudden trauma that nobody was really expecting. Nobody saw it coming, usually caught unaware. Just massive amounts of destruction and death and dying and injuries. And then they end up, honestly, after natural disaster, you sort of end up with a refugee crisis, right? Or a displaced people's crisis. And so the end result ends up being very similar. They're in tents, they're in camps, they're in stadiums, all living together collectively. For a refugee crisis, they're not really planned. Those two can be very sudden and very disruptive. And you end up with the same sort of psychological trauma, as well as medical issues, from people having to flee their homes. So emotionally, they're sort of a little bit different, but the end result ends up kind of being the same. Anytime someone is forced from their home for any reason, disaster, war, having to flee, government, whatever, it's always traumatizing, and it always ends up with large groups of people in a singular area.
You said you've been in the medical field for a long time, even before
Yeah.
mobile medics. How did that journey start?
So I was a paramedic for over 30 years. I still am a licensed paramedic for well over 30 years at this point, and I've done rural, metro. I was a SWAT medic for a police department
Wow.
in my younger days. I've done fixed wing medicine. I've done helicopter medicine. I used to own the paramedic schools here in the state of Alaska for a number of years before I sold them to the university. So I sort of had a myriad of exposure to my paramedicine career, and it started in my early 20s. I'm wanting to say I was about 22 years old. My godparents were both paramedics for a local ambulance service. And when I was 12 or 13, they used to take me with them when they went to class to either teach or learn something. And sometimes I would be the mock victim. And so when I graduated high school, there was a local community college doing an EMT class. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll go do EMT. And that was it. I never looked back. 30 plus years later, I'm still a paramedic.
Well, I saw on your website you put the article that you were a part of the CNN Heroes in 2022.
Yes.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank
That
you.
is a big honor. But
Thank
when
you.
you first started, did you think what you're doing would have the impact as it has?
No, no, I didn't. We started, probably 6 or 7 years ago now. Like I said, I was with another organization, and we were helicoptered into a southern part of Haiti after a hurricane. And they dropped us off, and we found this abandoned house with no windows, no electricity, no running water, but it had a roof and a floor. Close enough. So we sort of made our team house there, and we were servicing a local orphanage and the surrounding village. Um, and then one night after we got home, after a day of clinic, there was 5 of us, and we were sitting around talking, and somebody said, I think that you should. I was saying, I wish we could get into some of these other villages. Like, nobody has been here. And someone said, well, you should probably start an organization that does that. And that's where it started. That's where MMI started, is on that porch in Haiti, eating MREs with the group. So those 5 people for the first 2 years, it was just us. It was just the 6 of us. There's no way that I would have anticipated or could have predicted, honestly, like sort of what Mobile Medics has grown into. I'm also very cognitive of what I don't want it to grow into.
Yeah.
I never want it to be so big that it's hard to manage and control. I want us to be, our stuff to be in backpacks. I want us to be able to travel. I want us to be able to get into the barrios in the mountains of Puerto Rico on the backs of donkeys, or the islands in the Philippines in a really suspect bamboo boat, right? So no, honestly, that was kind of a long answer to, I had no idea sort of what it is morphed into, but it's very exciting.
Wow, burros.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've taken donkeys and pig trucks and goat trucks and motorcycles and horses and yeah, you name it, we've been on it. And rickety little bamboo catamaran boats 3 hours into the ocean across, to an island in Philippines. But yeah, it's an adventure.
What motivates you?
What motivates me is knowing that there are people out there that we can make a difference for, that otherwise would have gotten no treatment. So Turkey, for instance, our most recent mission, we ended up in the Hatay province, which is right on the Syrian border. In the bigger towns, that was all sort of epicenter, but in the bigger towns close to the epicenter, everybody was there. All the food NGOs, and NGO means non-governmental organizations, so basically volunteers. So the food NGOs and the medical NGOs and the search and rescue teams from all over the world showed up for Turkey. And then I started looking, because this is what we do, out farther away from the epicenter, but still highly affected areas, and there was nobody there. And so what motivates me is knowing that we, on day 4 post earthquake, we were in those areas where people were still trapped in the rubble, but there was not enough search and rescue teams to get to them, where people had injuries that had not been treated. So what motivates me is knowing that there are vulnerable people in remote areas that likely won't get seen, or very late will get seen, just because of demographics. When you have a disaster on that scale, it's hard to get everywhere. So, we try to get there.
So just talking to you, I realize how, empathetic you are with helping all these people. How important is something like empathy in these situations?
Probably 90% of what we do is psychological first aid. So people want to tell their story. People need to speak their trauma as part of their healing process. And remember, they're still in the middle of it. I'm going to be there for 10 days and 2 weeks, and I'm going to come back to my house with running water and electricity, and I'm going to be warm and I'm going to be fed. And they're still going to be living in a tent, not sure where, food is coming from for breakfast for their children. So they need to speak their trauma. They need someone to listen, and they need to know that someone sees them and cares about them and is there for them. And so, like I said, 90% of what we do is psychological first aid. I will sit and have tea with you. Tell me your story. Tell me how scared you were. Let me hold your hand. Let me give you a hug. And let me, clean up that little wound for you and put a Band-Aid on it. That's almost secondary, quite frankly. But yeah, tell me your story, because I'm here for you. I came all this way specifically for you and your family. So what can we do for you? And we don't just do medicine. If we find that they've got no water, the baby has no diapers, there's no formula, because this is not my first earthquake or disaster. It's their first earthquake or hurricane or whatever. I know who the players are. I know where they are. I know how to get food, water, diapers, formula to this area so I can start making calls. So we try to, sort of holistically look at the bigger picture. What can we do for these people in this moment? Where are the resources aside from medical? Because medicine doesn't matter if you're hungry and thirsty, and food and water don't matter if you are really sick. So they sort of need to go together.
So where do you want to see the organization in the next 3 to 5 years?
I would like to see it probably just a little bit bigger than it is. Right now we said one team at a time. And I'm starting to see over the last couple of years, we'll see concurrent disasters. Like I was in Puerto Rico for that hurricane when the hurricane hit Florida. And so because we only send one team at a time, we wrapped up Puerto Rico and ended up going to Florida. So I'd like to be able to have quite frankly, the money and the resources, because I have the personnel. All of my medical people are volunteer, and we are 100% funded by donations. So I would like to be able to have the money and the resources to send out more than one team at a time.
So how can people reach out and donate?
So we are on all the social media, on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. We have a website, mobilemedicsinternational.org. So any of those places will have the ability for people to like click a link and donate. You can also, if you choose to, like sign up for our monthly newsletter, because one of the things that's really important to me is because we are donation driven, I understand the significance of, the little old lady digging in her pocketbook and handed me $20. I understand the significance of writing a check and sending it in the mail to our address for $50. I understand the impact of an organization donating $10,000. And so what they're actually saying is, we trust you. We trust you to do the right thing. We trust you to use this money wisely. We trust you to help as many people as you can with this. And so to that end, we have developed a monthly newsletter to show people where their donations go, because I think it should be 100% transparent where every dime goes. When you send me that $20, you do not expect that to, pay for some extraneous thing. Like, you want those Ukrainian refugees to benefit from that. You want the people of Turkey to benefit from that. So we show you what we do with your money. I think
That
that's
is
important.
important. A lot of people
Mhm.
think that, like, what is it going to?
Yeah, and we show you. It doesn't go to admin fees because we don't have any. It doesn't pay our volunteers because they don't get paid. It doesn't, it literally goes exactly where I'm hoping that you wanted it to go. So I do think that's important, because if they trust us enough to hand us, $5, that's significant. It's significant. It means that $5 is, means a lot. And we're going to,
I just want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to me and sharing your story. And what you're doing is, amazing, helping people, especially in areas where other people don't go to.
yeah. Thank you for allowing me to tell Emma my story. I'm really, really proud of our volunteers. The amount of, I mean, it's pretty significant when you send out a WhatsApp to a bunch of doctors and nurses and anesthetists and pharmacists and say, hey, can you guys get on a plane and fly to Turkey tomorrow? And they say yes. I realize that they're walking away from their jobs, that they're, burning up vacation time, that they're, whatever, rearranging their lives, leaving their kids, missing birthdays and bar mitzvahs and all kinds of things. They are amazing human beings, so I sort of am technically the face and the voice of MMI, but honestly, they do most of the work. So, with the sign of a good leader, I know how to delegate.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I have the most amazing group of volunteers, and I love talking about them. And what they do and what they provide to people. I'm really proud of them. And if you are medically licensed in any country, because our volunteers come from 5 of the 7 continents, if you are medically licensed in any country, then you can apply to travel with MMI and go on responses. So
How is that process of, like say Turkey and then calling people saying, let's get there? Like they're ready to drop everything?
they are ready to drop everything. So I was actually playing a board game with my daughters, and my medical director, who lives in New Mexico, texted me and said, "Are we going to Turkey?" And I said, "What happened in Turkey?" Like I was completely
Yeah.
unplugged from everything. And so then I researched it, and I'm like, "Yes, we're going to Turkey." And it started from that instant. So what happens is logistically, there's a bunch of stuff to do. So you don't just show up in somebody's country, right? You have to have permission to be there. We bring in a full pharmacy, so we have to make sure that we have permission to bring in the medications and that they don't get stopped at customs. And, it's all checked baggage. But, once you hit Turkey and, borders, customs and borders sometimes gets hinky. So you have to have permission for all of that. And that's sometimes really hard to get, obviously, in the middle of a crisis. So I start working all of that. I throw out a notification on WhatsApp and say, hey, we need to get to Turkey as soon as possible, because the key is to get there as quickly as possible. The challenge is the airports don't always open right away. So we actually looked at flying into bordering countries and driving in, which we have done before. We will land outside a hurricane area and drive into it, just because the airports aren't open. But this one, the Adana airport opened up enough we could get in. So I'll send out a WhatsApp. All of my volunteers are on the WhatsApp. I have about 100. They're all on the WhatsApp. And I say, we're going to go to Turkey. I anticipate we're going to leave on this date. And I anticipate we're going to be home on this date. If you're coming from the United States, it's about 40 hours to get there. I live in Alaska, so I'm usually the longest travel and the last
Yeah.
one to get there. Yeah, so it's about 40 hours. So I kind of give them as much information as I know. And then everybody will start texting me, I can go, I can go, I can go. And I take that entire list of people who said they can go. I decide the size of team that we need. Do we need 4? Do we need 6? Do we need 8? Rarely do I take more than 8, because I like everybody to fit in a single vehicle if possible, because vehicle and gas is hard to find. I also am pretty adamant about, when we go into disaster areas, we need to be completely self-sustaining. You need to bring all your own food for the entire deployment. You need to bring a tent and a sleeping bag and a way to purify water, because we will not stress the already stressed out infrastructure of the country that we're going into. I am not going to take beans and rice out of a pot that's feeding a neighborhood. Like I'm not doing it. You will bring your own food. So everybody brings it's extreme camping. So we are completely self-sufficient, so we don't take away from these people. So I decide the size of the team. I look at everybody that volunteered. I pick my team, and then I send it over to my travel coordinator. And we have an organization that supplies us with free tickets. They specifically fly NGOs to disaster areas. So she works on getting everybody. Turkey, I had a doctor from Malaysia, I had a paramedic from London, I had a nurse anesthetist from Missouri, and me from Alaska. So she coordinates getting us all in the same place at the same time. Also getting us, if we have to go into a major city and drive in, like finding us a hotel room where everybody can wait until I show up. It's usually me. I'm usually the last one in. So she'll get everybody a hotel room for a night, or an Airbnb, or sometimes we've even slept in people's garages, until we're all together as a team. She finds us a car, all of the logistics, all of the travel stuff. We all get in country, and we start the mission. And usually what starting the mission means is we actively search for people that are really remote or have not had access to help at that point. So we start asking around, we start making phone calls, we start driving around, we start asking officials, what towns have you not been to yet? Where have you not been able to send resources? And then we drive there and see if they need us. And if they don't, we drive to the next place. So, but we always find the reason that we're there. We always find it.
Has the evolution of technology help be ready faster?
Absolutely. It has definitely helped us be ready faster. WhatsApp is amazing because it can be used worldwide, right? So I have since found out, now that I travel the world, that the United States is one of the very few places that you have unlimited talk and text as kind of a standard.
Yeah.
The rest of the world has to still pay for texting or calls or buy a plan or whatever. WhatsApp is free for everybody, right? It doesn't count as a text. So that kind of technology, being able to be on a WhatsApp, being able to be on a travel thread, it's all great for planning the missions or finding out what's going on in the world. It all goes out the window when you get into the disaster zone because nothing works. There's no cell signal, there's no Wi-Fi, so we have old-fashioned, well, they're not old-fashioned, but we have radios that have a 3-mile radius, like you see police wear or firefighters wear, with the mic clip. And so it's all about the technology till we get into the disaster zone. And then literally we're on walkie-talkies from that point because none of our stuff works
Right.
anymore.